Welcome, my Phoenix family, to One-Footed Phoenix. Today we'll be talking about the stereotypes and misconceptions that affect disabled people on a daily basis. This video is sponsored by Thera V. This is the Thera V device, and it's very good for phantom pain. I got this device to help with my own phantom pain, and over the last few weeks that I've been trying it out, I've noticed that my phantom pain has gotten a lot better and that I have a lot less really bad electrical zaps like I used to have. So the device comes with the little control unit, and it also comes with these little vibrators like that. And if you're interested in getting one of these devices for yourself, I'll leave a link in the description down below, along with the discount code AmandaE10, where you can get 10% off the product for yourself. Inspiration for this video comes from the channel Wheels No Heels. If you'd like to check her out, I'll put a link in the description down below. The first stereotype is that disabled is a bad word to be using, and that's not the case at all. In fact, most people that have a disability or that are disabled do refer to themselves as I have a disability or I am disabled. And it's not a bad word at all. In fact, it actually recognizes that they have a challenge to overcome in the world and that the world may be more difficult for them to navigate. Some people go as far to use the term differently abled to describe a disabled person, and this is very demeaning because saying that I'm differently abled instead of just saying that I'm disabled means that it implies that my disability doesn't exist, and when you imply that my disability doesn't exist, it makes it much harder to get accessible parking and accessible bathrooms and things that I need to just go about my daily life. The second misconception is that people in wheelchairs can't walk. This isn't actually true at all. There are people called ambulatory wheelchair users, and an ambulatory wheelchair user can walk and can get around, but they may, for whatever reason, choose to use a wheelchair because of pain, because they can't walk very far, because they struggle to walk, because maybe their balance isn't very good. And so there's many reasons that someone may choose to use a wheelchair or someone may have to use a wheelchair. And there is a difference between someone that chooses to use a wheelchair and someone that has to use a wheelchair. There's all sorts of different reasons that that person may be using a wheelchair. So this misconception is something that I actually experience a lot as an amputee, because people always ask me if I have a prosthetic, and they ask me how long I walk on my prosthetic, and they just act like it's a bad thing to be using a wheelchair when it's absolutely not a bad thing at all. In fact, using a wheelchair lets me have other time that I can spend in my leg, and using my wheelchair lets me have a break from using my prosthetic leg. So it doesn't mean that I don't use a prosthetic just because you see me in a wheelchair. It just means I need a break from my prosthetic for whatever reason. Misconception number 3 is that people in wheelchairs make bad dates. This is actually not true at all. But there is that misconception out there that people believe that if you're in a wheelchair, it's not as fun to date you, or that you can't do as many activities. And well, you can't do as many activities. You can totally have just as much fun with an able-bodied person as you can with a person in a wheelchair. There just has to be some adaptation and creativity in how you plan your dates for the person that is in the wheelchair. If you would like to see a video on dating an amputee, I'll leave a link down in the description down below so that you can watch that video after this one. Misconception number 4 is that all people in wheelchairs have the same condition. Now, we talked about this a little bit, that there's lots of different reasons that someone may end up in a wheelchair, but sometimes people think that just because I'm in a wheelchair, I have the same condition as their cousins, brothers, uncles, whatever, and that's absolutely not true at all. In fact, I'm in a wheelchair because I had like a fairly rare condition that caused me to lose my leg, but the main reason that I use a wheelchair is just because it hurts to have my prosthetic on all the time. And so people that use wheelchairs definitely don't all have the same condition. Not all of us are paralyzed, not all of us are amputees, not all of us can transfer from place to place. It just depends on the condition that you have that causes you to use a wheelchair. Misconception number 5 about disability. Wheelchair users always need to be pushed. This one is literally like my biggest pet peeve, is that people just assume that because I'm in a wheelchair, I always need to be pushed. And it's not the case at all. In fact, very rarely do I need help being pushed. And you know, like this weekend is going to be one of those situations where I do need help being pushed, but it's because my wheelchair motor is broken right now. And so I will need help being pushed to be able to go play Pokemon Go Fest. But in most situations, that is not the case, and I do really prefer to push myself in any situation that I'm in because it feels like I have more capability and more freedom when I can push myself. Disability misconception number 6. Having a disabled model damages a brand. Well, this is not true at all. A lot of companies think that having a disabled model somehow damages their brand and damages the reputation that they have with their customers. And in truth, having a disabled model is actually really good for a company because it shows like inclusion and it shows that they're willing to embrace diversity, and it shows that they are willing to have representation in the media of disabled people. Having representation in the media of disabled people is so important because there's so many people out there that just don't see themselves in the media and that don't see themselves in day-to-day life. And it's so important because when people see disabled people like on TV or on movies, it shows that like, hey, we exist, and it shows that being a disabled person isn't a bad thing. Misconception number 7. Disabled people are always unhappy with their life. Well, this is not true at all. Some disabled people are unhappy with their lives, and it is okay for a disabled person to be unhappy at times, but not all of us are grumpy and unhappy all the time. In fact, most of us in the disabled community are people that have very fulfilling lives, that have a lot of joy from what we do. A lot of us have good jobs, and a lot of us are able to do things that we never would have imagined doing without having a disability. So while it's difficult to have a disability, it doesn't mean that we always have to be miserable. Misconception number 8. Disabled people should be pitied all the time. This one kind of drives me crazy because I am one of those people that does not like to be pitied at all. And so it does kind of drive me nuts when people are like, oh, that's so sad, you lost your leg like so young and blah, 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 blah. And I'm just sitting there going like, yeah, I lost my leg, but it wasn't the end of my life. Like, I lost my leg, not my life, so like, get over it. In fact, losing my leg was the gateway to the rest of my life, and it was the gateway to not having to live my entire life in horrible, horrible pain of CRPS. What we do seek is understanding, and we seek accessibility rather than being pitied for being in a tragic situation. You know, most people see disability as being this tragic situation, but it's really not. Like, not all disabilities are the result of something horribly tragic. Some disabilities are the result of illness and injury, but other disabilities are the result of genetics. Disability misconception number 9. All disabilities are visible. This is something that I ran into a lot when dealing with learning disabilities, such as ADHD and dyslexia. because those disabilities are not something you can physically see. And when you can't physically see a disability, it's easy to ignore it. And it's easy for people to just be like, oh, that doesn't exist, or like, oh, you don't have that, and oh, you don't need help because we can't see it. And it's maddening. It's so frustrating to have a disability that people can't see. And it's the same way with CRPS. A lot of times that is a disability that is not seen. And so people just assume that like you're making stuff up or that you're crazy because they can't see how much pain you're actually in, and they can't see that you're in pain above kidney stones and above childbirth when you have CRPS. So the moral of the story there is to just be kind to everyone, because you never know what someone's going through, and you never know if they have a hidden disability. Disability misconception number 10. Disabilities are the results of genetics. While this is true for some disabilities, such as Down syndrome, it's not true for many other disabilities, such as being an amputee is one that is not influenced by genetics. So just because I only have one leg does not mean that anyone born from me is going to only have one leg. Like, that's absolutely ridiculous, but some people actually believe that. So there's other reasons for people having a disability, such as injury and illness. If you enjoyed this video and you would like to see another One-Footed Phoenix video, click over here, and I'll see you all in the next video. Thank you for watching. Bye!